Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today we're joined by Mosstyn Howell. Mosstyn is from UbiPark. Mosstyn, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming in
Pleasure.
and just sharing your journey thus far. So, Mosstyn, let's dig in a little bit about you. Tell us a bit about your background and your history within business, life, and career.
So, yeah, home was Creswick, a small country town in country Victoria.
Nice.
And I was lucky enough to move to Melbourne very early days. Thought I was going to be a keen golf. I was a keen golfer, and I thought I was going to be a golf pro. So I was an apprentice greenkeeper as my first role outside school. Worked
Okay.
out that was definitely not for me, and I was definitely not good enough to play golf for a living. I would have starved. But always had an entrepreneurial spirit. Even at school, I was the one setting up sweeps and running Melbourne Cup books and coming up with all sort of harebrained ideas back then. And then I got into parking. I come back to Melbourne when I was around 30 and got into car parking as a necessity. I worked in a number of jobs. I sold mobile phones and I worked in bars and hospitality. And to make ends meet, I also worked in car parks for Wilson Parking. So I started at the bottom run. I was stamping early birds in the 2 to 3 degrees rain and hail on top of car parks in Melbourne, double parking cars
Doesn't sound
and
very exciting, does it?
no, not now.
Yeah,
And thankfully, that technology has come around, and there's not a lot of people doing those sort of things anymore. But yeah, I mean, my first day on the job
yeah,
for
true.
Wilson was at Golden Square. I'll never forget it. Actually, it was Golden Square car park. I was a kid from the country that didn't know too much about things in the city. And when we went through, I was getting trained how to open the car park and set up for the day and get ready to sort of get the cars parked. And in those days, used to double park a lot of cars. Now we got everything set up, and the last thing the manager of the car park got me to do is he rolled me around to the back of the car park where the stairwells were, and he started unwinding the fire hose, and I was sort of going, "What the hell's
Okay.
going on? What the hell's going on here?" And he said, "Right, young fella, once I say now, you turn that hose on as quickly as you can." And he booted open the stairwell door, and he goes, "Now," and turned the hose on very quickly, and there it was, obviously the homeless and the drug addicts in the stairwells that he used to have to clean out every morning. So it was an interesting
Oh,
Oh,
goodness.
wow.
start to
Wow.
my life in that. I sort of
Yeah,
worked.
pretty eye-opening when you see that, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I worked through with Wilson. I worked through a career there over 10 years. So I sort of started doing the normal car
Uh-huh.
park attendant roles, and I got into the marketing and sales team, and I did a lot of administration around monthly parking, card management. Learned the business. It was a good way to learn the business that way.
Mhm.
And then they got me back into operations, and I was running a suite of car parks in Melbourne for Wilson Parking, and that grew into a role in New Zealand where I was the North Island business operations manager running the entire operation for Wilson Parking in New Zealand. And then come back and got into the technology and found I was
Well,
probably no good in operations. And I had a real passion around technology. The operations background gave me a really good understanding of what would work. And it wasn't just selling technology for technology, it
mhm.
was solving problems and using that technology to solve the real problems. And I had a good career
Mhm.
selling technology, Boomgate and parking guidance technology for both Wilson and a company called TMA Tech, which was my last role before UbiPark. I was a sales director there, and probably the best part of that job is I was tasked with finding technology from around the world to bring back into Australia, and New Zealand and the
Mhm.
Philippines was our three main markets. And that's where I started to sort of find things, and I started to see this mobility space opening up. Obviously, mobile phones, and I saw some technology that allowed the smartphone to open a barrier. And when I talked to my boss at the time, he said, "No, we won't be doing those things for mobile phones. That's never going to happen." I said to him, "It's
Not
probably
gonna happen.
time."
Okay, interesting.
You can see the future of it.
No, I thought it was time then to, but I've always wanted to do something myself and always wanted to have a crack at my own business. And I thought this is the opportunity to do it. So that's when UbiPark was born, and we kicked off, and we pretty much got everything wrong. And as I've heard in some of your past podcasts, I've got a horror story to tell around the non-technical founder that that thought he knew more about tech than he did. And I sort of come out, I think, come out of that corporate world where I had a lot of support and a lot of good people around me that sort of help you sort of navigate through and get things sort of developed and into the market. But I sort of come out with that mindset that I wanted the bells and whistles. I needed that app. It was my reputation. I needed the best app in the parking industry. And obviously you don't build apps like that. But that was what my head was around that. And we made a lot of mistakes early days. Got caught up with the wrong people, listened to the wrong people, and had a terrible
Mhm.
time early days.
It sounds like you got a vast level of experience clearly in the space. So your operations, sales, marketing, you've covered all facets of what parking
Had a
really is.
fair bit of training before you went
Yeah,
out and
quite a bit of
went
training to
into
move into this business,
different
but
faces.
I think well, you raised an interesting point because anyone as a domain expert, as I would call you in the space, you've been working in the industry, worked through a number of roles, understand what key problems might be, and how technology could help. Yeah, I think you touched upon something interesting where you've also always had the support around you of a team that can deliver, and you come back to yourself or maybe one or two people when you start out, and it's like yeah, the likelihood of getting that perfect bells and whistles app to market, neither, yes, you wouldn't build it that way to begin with. We start small, iterate, but yeah, that probably from the step back of all the support you had, but working in corporate because you can do that, and they throw the budgets at things when necessary, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I think that's it. You do a lot of things, you get a lot of guidance, and you get a lot of support, and
Mhm,
you've got to do everything yourself. And obviously, you
mhm,
start to try and put people around you that can help you. I think that was probably my challenge was trying to find the right people to come around that you could. And I sort of explain it when I'm at a barbecue that it's like taking your car to a mechanic and saying, they get a service and they ring you up and they say, oh, you need new brakes or you need this or you need that, and you sort of trust them and you say yes. And that's what happened for me through the early iteration of our technology was we had people around that probably weren't on the same page as us, didn't have the same goals, had different agendas, and to be quite honest, probably weren't great people. And we trust them. I'm a trusting sort of person, and we went
mhm,
down that track, and we spent a lot of money. The first sort of release of the app and the console technology that we started with was around 300 grand. And when I went to the next, when we sort of separated away
big
from these
investment,
guys,
yeah.
we went to the next guy. He said, "Yeah,
Mhm,
you've got something that's worth 30 grand," and you're just sort of devastated,
mm,
And,
Oh well.
and pretty much everyone, we sort of did three iterations of this. Before I sort of got some real good knowledge around what the CTO of the business, Will Vanderkamp, now is someone I've known for 30 years, and Will's
mhm,
totally on the same page as us, and someone I trust with my life. And it's the first time when he come on in 2016. It was the first time I felt like we had
mhm,
control of it and I had someone had our back. But yeah, we went every time I took it to a new technology company developer. They pretty much tell me I had to start again. And I just said to him, I said, can we write it in English? Because I'm sick of someone telling me that they've written it in the wrong language, and it's in a language that no one else uses. So that was sort of
mm,
the terrible times. But since then, Will's really straightened us around the technology. It's all built on the Microsoft stack, .NET, and we
mhm,
use Xamarin for our app platform, Xamarin Forms, and it's
mhm.
now starting to really prosper as a technology platform, and we're sort of in that sort of spate now of running through customer experience and user experience sort of and taking it to the next level.
Mhm. So,
Okay.
stepping back into that experience that isn't ideal for anybody, like, what would you say, sort of, were you on your own trying to design and work with the team, or how did you approach the initial iterations of the product?
Or hey, how did you probably approach picking the team to help
Mm,
to find the partner
mm,
that you were expecting there to be a partner?
Yeah, we had an original co-founder, and then we
mhm,
found an advisory company, and that advisory company come sort of pitched to us around. They had a CEO type of role, a CFO sort of skill set, and a CTO sort of skill set, and the way they pitched the business to what actually happened was two different things. But the way the pitch of the business and why we actually went down there was they could give us that sort of sales CEO, sort of open the networks, raise money. There was that sort of promise.
mhm,
The CFO would straighten us up around the finance and the pricing and how to commercialize the product. And then the CTO could pull all the technology together. And then you could pull in resources from their company like marketing and things like that at an hourly rate rather than putting them on full time or using sort of
On full
contractors
time.
to do that. Yeah. So it was really appealing, and we went down that and we committed to that project. I ended up raising the 350 grand, and 300 it went to them, and we got a $30,000.
Okay, so you raised it on your own accord.
I did, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I've been really lucky, and those early
Yeah, okay.
shareholders with us are still with us
Uh-huh.
and real supportive, and they helped me through not just funding that initial phase, but they helped me fund getting out of that as well, which has been amazing for them.
Okay. And the model sounds spectacular, and especially as a startup founder, having everything there to work with. What do you think went wrong? What were some
Oh,
of the things that weren't quite right from your perspective? So, what could
Because
have been done better?
it does sound like it's the ideal
Yeah, it does.
group
It's
to
an
go to.
interesting
They've
model.
got
I'm
the
just trying to learn
experience
a
and
bit
the
more about
resources to help you.
yeah.
I think for me, I was a little bit naive, right? So
Mm.
and committed and trusted, and I didn't do enough due diligence around that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So I think that's probably the first thing. And then, and as I said to you guys, I probably, we're now committed to a full agile development, with
Mhm.
2 week sprints and outcomes out of that where I couldn't get my head around that early days. And even,
Mhm.
through the 2 or 3 early development companies that went through our journey, they were sort of pitching some of that sort of stuff, but I couldn't get my head around it. Coming from that traditional corporate world where it's all waterfall, pretty much, you get a quote and a scope,
Mm.
and you get a price, and can you go and build it to that price? But that was probably the biggest learning for me, and what now I understand is the right way to build out the technology. But it took me a while to get my head around that, and that was probably the biggest learning out of that.
So, from a difference with waterfall to agile, explain that to listeners. What's been the experience for you going through? Obviously, yeah, we walk out of corporate. I think in corporate world, everyone wants a budget. They've got time frames in mind. They've got costs in mind. They need to allocate budgets to things. So it generally ends up still in the corporate mindset of going to get a quote, scoping this thing out. How do you find the difference working in an agile environment? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think because we're still in some old school thinking with our customers, we've got to do a
Mhm.
little bit of both, and that's probably
Mm.
we're still going to have maybe scoping out an entire project, but then we split it up into our sprints and sort of start knocking off pieces of that project. But for me, it allows us that flexibility. Some of these larger projects that our customers are asking us for, by the time you sort of build it out and get it to
Mhm.
market, it's probably not exactly what they need after that. So the agile environment allows you to sort of pivot and be sort of flexible through the build process, so that you can actually get something to market that's actually going to be useful at the time it gets there.
I think that's an important point you raised there. You mentioned you scope out. Do you scope out a roadmap? Is that how you manage it internally? How do you?
So we've been sort of developing off the back of sales, which is now just moving. So as a young company, I think it's a
Yes.
good way to do it. So we go out and we'd sell it.
Mhm.
We'd prove obviously to the customer that we had the capability to do it, and then we would deliver specifically to that
Mhm.
customer. But as you obviously scale and get bigger, you can't keep doing that. So we're now moving. We're in the midst of doing that right
Mm.
now. We're moving to where we're actually building our products based on a feedback from our customers and feedback internally from the team,
Mhm.
scoping that out, and then building that into the roadmap and developing out the module that's sort of going into the product.
Yeah, selling off sales is always interesting. So I think we're probably in a similar position. We've got a startup business, which is startup 5 years, it's been operating. So core business is Aerion, but Shopfront is a product that we run in the pharmacy space. And it's similar. We've been building the product ourselves. So we'd have one customer, build some requirements for them, meet their needs, sell another customer in, but then sell on the scope of, as a part of delivery, we'll deliver this, this, and this to move you forward in terms of your direction. I think it gives you the ability to work with customers and get to know them, but there comes a point where you really need to take control of the roadmap and the vision of the business, because you can get a little bit off track doing that too. That's something I've noticed doing it that way, and with feedback from other people, that yes, we need to sell off sales maybe in the early days, unless we go and pull in $1 million of funding. It's probably a model that most people will venture down, and you need to be agile to it. So definitely, in an agile mindset, would help you through that process.
Yeah, it definitely helped us
Mm.
survive, and I
Mhm.
don't think we would have survived if
Mm.
we tried to build a product and then went out to sell it and
Mhm.
commercialize it that way. It's so and there's a couple of people in our team that struggle with it because we've been developing for the next customer's requirements and the next customers. Now we've started to say, well, no, let's get the best product and develop that best product, and then start to sell the product as a product that doesn't need development for each customer. And that's the space we're now. But by able to, we've done some sales with Porsche over the last few months, and we've delivered a solution for them. And we're building out a CarPlay application, which will be pretty close to first in world. We're not quite sure who else is around developing it. We've got it working at the moment. We know it's really cutting edge because Apple have just released the CarPlay entitlement for parking in iOS 14.
Okay.
So it's really new. We've been working on it a long time. We've been pushing for this entitlement, so we'd already done a fair bit of work, and we were fairly advanced. But it allowed the Porsche motorists to search, navigate, access, and pay for parking directly from the dash, the in-car screen. Windows completely up and everything being controlled by the car. So it'll be a lot safer. It'll be a great customer experience for the Porsche motorist. And then we tie a commercial model in it where they'll get a benefit or a cost of discount parking with our parking location partners. But that's been done in an agile environment, but obviously with a goal and a set outcome that needed to be delivered out of it.
I think,
Sounds like a pretty
outcome
cool
support.
feature.
Yeah, it
But
is a good
having that
feature.
outcome to guide where you're always heading is
Yeah.
necessary if you're doing anything agile. Otherwise, you're just wandering around in circles every sprint, not knowing where you're actually heading, like what the outcome's meant to be from each sprint to sprint.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because we didn't know all the restrictions that Apple would put on us from a design and a user experience. There's obviously a lot of different guidelines around how CarPlay needs to happen. So we had to be very agile, and our customer had to be very agile around that as we were building it out. And it's been, Porsche have been a great customer to actually do this with, because they've been really understanding and worked through it with us, which has been really, really great.
It's especially, it's necessary to be flexible, especially when you're reliant on a third party like that that's dictating everything of how you're actually going to implement things. And it can change on any day, especially when they have one of those big announcements.
Yeah, I mean,
It happens all the time with them.
You guys probably know it better than I do, but
Yeah.
things can change pretty quickly in the next update or some type of restriction. So it's always a moving beast.
Question I'll ask around working with customers to design product. I think you mentioned at the start where you said you maybe couldn't have built the product and pushed it to market, but what has it taught you around the customer's needs, actual requirements while working with them during the sales, selling, working with them to refine products? What has that actually taught you?
Oh, that's a really good point too. And I've got a lot of experience in parking, but if I built out the app that I wanted, I would add a great app for a white male that's 49, and that would have been pretty much our market, I think. So I mean, listening to the customer is the number one thing, and getting understanding. But also, we've got obviously the B2B customer, but then we've got the end user maybe being a customer outside that. So making sure they're involved in the process in some way, and focus grouping's become a really big part of how we sort of design and build out the product, so the customer make sure it works for them and they're actually going to use it. That's been probably the biggest learning for me is don't go and build what you think's right. Make sure you get that information and educate yourself around what the actual customer's going to use.
Have you found any differentiation between what they say they want to what they actually need?
Yeah, some people don't know what they want, and they just sort of know they want a shiny app that does a heap of stuff. And that's probably the biggest thing of trying to, our teams become very good at trying to, find out what actually is the actual goal. And so asking people what they want and maybe asking people what the outcome is they want is probably been where we've gone. And then we sort of work back from what they're trying to achieve, and then sort of work back from there on how we're going to get to there.
Yeah, it's a good approach because a lot of times what someone says they want is not what they actually need when you try and find what the real problem is.
There's
Yeah.
plenty of
Sometimes
examples
it's a
of
symptom,
those.
not the actual problem.
Yeah, correct.
So I was just going to say, I was one of those.
No.
I was one of those customers. So I thought I knew what I needed and not what I wanted. But again, I wouldn't have got the product. We didn't get the product right when we started. And, we're still obviously improving the product now because feedback changes and things like COVID-19 hits and people are thinking things completely differently than what they were 6 months ago.
Yeah, and no one ever gets it right first time out of the gate. It's a learning experience.
It's not meant to
Developing
be
software
get them right. first
complicated
time
thing
out of
with
the
a lot
gate.
of moving parts.
Yeah.
One
You're,
detail that's misinterpreted can totally change everything.
Yeah, and I think for someone that's a non-technical founder like myself, that's probably how it should be explained. The commercial side of actually building out something and spending a lot of money on something that maybe people won't use. If you bring it back to the MVP and create something that you can get out and test and get feedback and then improve on and improve on and improve on from there, you're going to save a lot of money. So commercially, that makes sense to me. But when I was sort of talking about it earlier, it wasn't sort of explained that way to me. It's just, let's start sort of small and build it up.
So on
Yeah.
that note, one thing that when you think about product development, it's you're innovating, you're developing something new, innovative. I think you'll need to take it as an innovation journey, not just build something and then put it out there to market. So I think when we're creating new product, especially if you're doing something that's slightly different to the market or completely different to the market, so you don't have all the answers. And I think as founders or as part of a core startup group, I think we need to be pretty humble to say, yes, we don't have all the answers, but if you're willing to adjust, evolve, and learn from your experiences, I think it's much faster to get to. And taking that mindset into a development makes it a lot easier to run when you run into those hurdles, which is customer doesn't like this model. Okay, why is that? What is the challenges that we have? What do the users really need? Setting up focus groups can really change the mindset of how you approach it because there's no right or wrong answer to the way you build and design products. There never is. You can design a product with your customer set and it could be perfect, meet their needs, and then a new product does it in a completely different way, which is more efficient, can take the market. So it just depends on how you think about it, really.
Yeah, I think the other thing to add to that is
Mm.
if I let the technical team build out what they wanted, they build an amazing product I probably couldn't sell or make any
Yeah,
money out of. So
yeah.
it's got to be a mix, and you got to run it through and make sure that you've got feedback from all around that 360 feedback. So it's feedback
Mhm,
from definitely the technical team's got to have feedback around how to build out that. You've got to have feedback from
mhm,
the end user or and the customer or the B2B customer that's actually purchasing it to make sure it's meeting all their goals as well.
mhm.
But yeah, that's I think the technical founders probably go down and build out these amazing products they can never commercialize, and that's probably the other side of it, isn't it?
That's the other side of the coin. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So they will get stuck in the tech, focus on that, and just build, 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 and then they don't even know how to commercialize operationally, how to support the product, get customers. So I think, from my perspective, there's two sides of it, and in the perfect world, you have a mix of it. Some great technical people, some great operations and sales people that can work with the customer, engage with them, and that are open to do that. You need everyone working in tandem, and it's a machine. So it's like a car without wheels. If you don't have any wheels on, it's not going to go very fast. So you need all the pieces of the puzzle to really get to the final outcome that's going to deliver the outcome for the customer.
Yeah. Just before we move on, I just want to take it back to sort of the teams that you were mentioning earlier. So do you currently have your own in-house team, or are you using another party to do that at the moment?
Yeah, so we've been, up until right now, we've been building everything internally,
Mm-hmm.
and we've just got to a point where I feel our processes and the ability for us to scale. So we're trying an offshoring team out at the moment, and we're just onboarding them at the moment. So far so good. We sort of did a fairly thorough process, looked at around I think it was around a dozen companies. I ended up in a country that I didn't think I would have. So we're
Which is?
actually India. I
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of thought I might have ended up in Eastern Europe or somewhere else in Asia. But yeah, the company that we've selected, I won't name them, but I think they've been the best that we saw through those dozen companies, and so far the experience has been what they actually pitched in the sales stuff. But I think if we try to put on an offshoring,
Would be rare
yeah,
from all the experience we've had.
if I try to put on an offshoring team, I think, say, even 12 months ago, we would have failed and we wouldn't have been set up for it. We wouldn't have been able to support them.
Yep.
We wouldn't have been able to direct them the right way. So we think we're,
Mm-hmm.
really well prepared now, and so far so good. It's only very early days, and we'll work through that over the next few months and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's a teething process. Things will come up. You'll understand how to manage the communication and work properly. So when you initially started, you said you'd gone through 3 different teams that had delivered the wrong product each time.
Oh, yeah.
W- I just want to try and ask, how did you approach finding those teams, and then how did you
Mm.
move on from one to the other and then slightly improve, but not much, like not drastically enough to say the product is fixed now, just so we can try and help some of the other people going through this.
Yeah, so everything was sort of tied around budget and funding and trying to find people that would do things, I suppose, cost effective, so we could get something up. So the first team was around that advisory company that we obviously had the really bad experience. I don't think the other
So
two
their
were.
resources they brought in to
Yeah,
develop for you.
they developed. They developed it. We paid them as part of that service that they offered up to us. The second sort of experience was probably a short experience. We worked out pretty quick that it wasn't going to work, and we were running out of money, so it probably wasn't going to work. So it was found through our network. We just started to look around for people that sort of could help us out. And then the third one actually, he was really good. He did a great job. He sort of again told me that whatever we'd done was completely wrong. It's on a wrong platform, and it's not a language everyone understands. But they did a lot of work on the early access equipment that we've got a smartphone app that opens a barrier or anything with an electric lock, a barrier, a roller door, or a pedestrian door. And they did a lot of work around that and actually got that up and running. But we have moved to platforms since we moved away from them. And, we got a software developer in-house at that time. We were a bit better funded. And, Kevin, who's still with us, has been amazing for us. And what he's done with Xamarin Forms was actually pretty cool. And what he's done with the product, it's a way better product than what it was, sort of 18 months ago.
Yeah, it's a natural progression that we see. You outsource initially because you can't afford a tech team, and then you bring it in-house once the funding comes in, so then you can try and monitor and have that constant technical knowledge staying in your business.
Yeah, I think
Just from the sound of it, was there like contractors or part-time in the middle there, or were they three technical teams?
Yeah, they were supposed contractors would be the best way to explain it. But for me, I'd been burnt so much that I wanted to have that control. I wanted to have someone in the team that was working around our agenda and our goals, and was on the same sort of the same sort of path and page that we all were. And yes, I think this goes back to some of my learning and some of my experience. I don't think I was I was very hard to get information out of my head of what I wanted and get that down into some sort of documentation. It wasn't something I was really good at, and that made it really hard. For I'm sure if I was doing this with you guys and I told you what I told some of those guys back then, you'd probably we'd have a similar experience. So I'm not blaming anyone in particular, but it was my experience. It would definitely sort of helped us not getting what we needed out of that. But that was brought in house. It was more I needed that sort of control and security and felt like everyone was on the same page. I just felt in that world that people have been working against us a little bit.
Yeah, they're just doing a job for you, depending on what the culture of that company is how much interest they're going to take in it and how much they're going to push into it as well, above and beyond what you're paying them to do. So I can see that's where a real strength of having your own CTO on board is. We can help direct it and guide it and understand what they're talking about. So I can imagine as a non-technical person, a lot of stuff just goes over your head. Like you said, you couldn't understand the concept of agile delivery as
Yeah.
opposed to previous stuff. But if they started driving into technical stuff, it'll just be completely lost.
Yeah.
If I go into any other industry, I'll just get lost with their terms.
Yeah, 100%. Some of the stuff was a different language, just them trying to explain it to me. And a lot of it I had to, you sort of, maybe I should have done a little bit more education around that sort of stuff myself. But,
that takes a lot of effort as well, though.
Yes.
But, you probably don't need to necessarily be technical and savvy to understand how they're developing it, as long as you can communicate with them well enough where they can ask you enough questions to understand what you're after, or you can articulate it in a way that they can then clarify and repeat it back to you the same. If they can do that, then they've understood it. It's more around that, I think, rather than you trying to be on top of the technology and understanding how and what and why.
I think that probably one of the most important roles we have in our team now is the BA, and I'm able then to communicate through to them in sales speak. They can convert it into a document that the development team can now look at and go, yeah, that works, or no, we'll need to do this a little bit differently. But it's now we're documenting things out. It's not just in someone's head, or we're not whiteboarding, just whiteboarding something, go and build that. It's now properly documented out.
Yeah, it has to be then. Everyone has to have like one source of truth effectively.
Yeah, that's right.
And if it's not clear enough, as soon as the assumptions start, the things just go sideways very quickly. We've seen that so many times before in the past. So just from our own team in early days.
Yeah, so the attention to detail was probably not my strong suit. So having that BA documented out, and then I'm reviewing and saying, yeah, that's what I want, and then the development team then grabbing it and saying, yeah, we might need to tweak this, or we might need to do this a little bit differently. But yeah, we're getting a lot better results than what we were when it was me just saying, you're right, this is what I want.
Yeah, that translation is key. And once the translation's right, then it makes everything smooth sailing. The understanding is clear, their intent is clear, and the outcome is extra clear. Yeah,
Documenting is pivotal. I think you've landed on something that's really important there because it establishes clarity across all parties. If you don't have a document or a source of truth or a plan in place, it becomes very difficult. And then there's a lot of hearsay and there's a lot of decisions being made, probably in the wrong spots. You've got developers making decisions on business outcomes. That's not a good place to be. And if you're not clear on what they're up to, it becomes quite challenging. And getting the right product in the mind of yourself, your customers, and the developers is nigh on impossible. Yeah, clarity, I think, is key to any project. Everybody needs to be on the same page. So you need someone leading the ship, but you also need people asking enough questions to ensure that they're on the same page. Because I feel like if you don't ask the questions as a developer, consulting team, whatever they might be, just to get to the crux of what is really needed, yeah, you're really going a little bit blind. So yeah, we need to clarify and verify all the time. I think it's really important.
Yeah, and I think in the early days, doing the due diligence on the team, make sure
Yeah.
that you actually understand that they are going to do what you need them to do, and they are the right people to partner up with if that's what you're doing. That's the work you got to do as your founder. You got to make sure that that team is going to be a good fit for you. They're going to be someone you can trust, because then you can throw the trust into it and allow them. Because you've got to. I think for me, I had to learn what they were telling me, and once you've got that trust up, you can actually come back the other way and open up and allow them to take control a bit more and guide you down the right direction, because they're the experts in that field.
Mm. Well, let's dig in a bit on that. A team. So, what are some of the qualities you believe you need in a team to work with? Trust you mentioned. Like, what are some of the others? Because I think it's an interesting topic. Just get it from yourself as to what you believe a team needs to have to deliver quality outcome.
I think if I was starting again, I was looking for something similar. I'd be looking at history, and I'd be definitely talking to customers of the company that I was looking to sort of partner up with around it, and that would probably be the main thing. And then making sure that you just don't, you get some sort of introduction from someone in your network that says these guys are really good, and you should partner up
Mm.
with them. You've just got to do that work yourself and make sure you don't leave too many stones unturned as you start to doing that due diligence. And I think once that's ticked off, and you can see the past records, you can see the history of delivery. I think that's when you can start opening up to the team and allow them to guide you down the next steps.
Hmm. Yeah, in terms of network, I think that's probably where most people go. So reaching out to a network, you don't know. But if you don't know anyone, that's when the stumbling block gets a bit hard, right? So if you don't know anyone in your network, where do you actually lean to? And that's a lot of challenges that a lot of startup founders find themselves in. They just start hunting online and they don't have the questions to ask and they don't think that way. So I think it's a couple of good things that you've raised there that people can basically start a conversation from.
Andrew, I think the other part of it is, we all have really good networks and big networks and people we trust, but if they haven't done or been in that experience, either they're not quite sure if they haven't had something developed themselves by these people, they may only know that they're good people. So whether they
Mm-hmm.
can actually do that job. So I think that's probably one area I just relied on. It could have been some of our shareholders, it could have been some of our advisory board members, and it's not just development; it's in a lot of different areas that we're working in. We were picking people to help us, do some fundraising last year, and I relied on some preferences from our network and got it completely wrong. So I think it's everything you're doing as a founder as you're coming up. Just make sure you do a bit more due diligence and just have someone in your network do a great introduction. Make sure you get it from 2 or 3 people, or make sure you talk to someone that's actually gone through the experience with them.
I think that's important because going through the experience is very different, like you said. So yeah, they may know them, but never built anything with them or worked with them for 3, 6, 9, 10 months, 12 months, or continuously working with them is where you need to be. Like it is a partnership. Bringing on a tech team should be seen as a partnership. If it's seen as a do a job, move on, that's generally not the right relationship. If that's the thinking of the founder, I'd question that because it is an ongoing piece of work. It's an ongoing experience and evolution. So yeah, it's something that people want to be really thinking about and talking to people like yourself. Who have you worked with in the past? How have you done it? I think that's why we share these stories so people can get a bit of a grip on everyone's little experiences, and they might take something from this that helps them along their journey, saves them the 3 companies, and they get it right. Maybe first time will be a great blessing from our perspective, and we get better ideas, better tech coming out, and what we seem to find is people like yourself are the ones that actually can drive some innovative tech because you understand the industry. The technical founders that try and throw a product into an industry can have a lot of trouble because they dive in and they may not understand it from the outside looking in. They have different challenges. It's bringing on different advisors in the industry, bringing on people that are going to help them get to the right outcomes, really working with customers. But from a technical person, that can be quite interesting because of different dynamics. So yeah, there is a bit in this, but the technical founder and the non-technical founder all have their own challenges in this, and sharing your stories and journeys is really important to us.
Yeah, I agree. I think what we're sort of seeing now is in our industry, sort of we sort of fit in that parking mobility industry. Just to give you an idea of what UbiPark has done, well, we've digitized the entire parking transaction. So we call it SNAP. So search, navigate, access, and pay directly from the phone. And obviously, as I said before, the smarts in the technology is the ability to open the barrier from the app.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of automation through there, and that's a lot of what we've actually been doing is we've been selling back into an industry that's got a lot of manual and paper-based archaic processes. We've sold a lot of automation through our platform that solves a lot of those problems. But we see it all the time. We see a uni student jump out of uni, had a bad parking experience at uni, and decides they want to create an app for it. And it's great. I'm happy to speak to all of those. And I've actually got one person that did that and is working with us at the moment. Because I said, just come and have a look at the industry. Come and work for us because I really liked her. And she's actually still with us. She's been with us now about 18 months. And she had the idea that parking was a really bad experience at uni, and she had some really good ideas around how to fix it. And when I pointed out that there was probably around 30 of these solutions in the market, and none of them had been able to commercialise. But I said to her, come and work in if you still want to go down that track and go ahead of that. It's a great idea. Just come and work for us as a part-time, have a look at the industry and think about where the next steps might be after that. And well, she's still with us after 18 months, so I'm hoping she stays with us too. She might go and do something, but it won't be the parking solution. But you see, we come up against some of our competitors have come from a non-industry background, and and there's obviously good thinking from those sort of people around it, but there's a lot of complexity through the industry that you've got to understand as well, why they're doing things certain ways to make sure you can commercialize your idea.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's a good advice for anyone out there that wants to jump into a new industry. Yeah, go work in it first, not just plug an idea because you've got a
Yeah.
problem. It can work. Like it's been done before where people have an issue and they solve it and they do it in their own accord. And there's plenty of success stories like that, but there's more failures than success stories in that space.
Yeah, when you're
That's
just
for
a
sure.
customer unhappy with the process, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it is.
You get
don't
ideas all the
understand the
time, but
detail.
it's going to be hard to do anything with them. I can attest to that.
Well,
Yeah.
we see. I'm happy to chat to these people in our industry. I actually love it, but we see people, and we've seen companies that have created ideas. Say an idea that they think Wilson and Secure, being our two largest operators here, are just going to jump on and take on, but they're sort of focused on their own things, and they do things in a way that may seem a little bit odd to people outside the industry, but it's something that they need to do to make what they're doing work and to make money for their business. And so if you don't understand some of those things, you've got to check that out before you jump in. Anyway, you've got to check out that some of these customers validate the idea that some of these key customers are actually going to want that. And that's probably been the key in our industry, where the companies that have jumped in not knowing that have sort of either had to pivot, and some of them have pivoted and survived, and others have disappeared.
Mm. I think that's the important point. Can you pivot and survive? Because the likelihood of you getting it right first time round is, not that high, really. Because there are pivots that are required. There is change in thinking. So then the tighter you keep your initial developments and thinking, the better it is. Because I imagine when you went and spent $300,000 on building something, thinking back to that, raising the next amount of money or how you did the next part would have been more challenging. How did you approach that? I would have asked that question.
Yeah, on my knees. I think it was very challenging. I mean, I did the family friends round early. We raised around $450,000 early from two investors. They're with me. They still talk to me, but we did waste their money. Yeah, we did waste their money, their original money that they put in. We just got it wrong. And then when you're sort of going to that next level, we raised some money in 2017. We raised $500,000 and from high net individuals, but that was a tougher race for us because we sort of didn't have the runs on the board, and we'd made mistakes, and we got it wrong. We still believed in the idea, and we were starting to get some traction, and we were lucky though. I think in hindsight, we got the right investor at the right time, and he convinced a couple of his mates to join us, and they've been great. They're on one of them's on our advisory board, and they've been really supportive through that time. They've put in a second time, and we've been really lucky, and that help from those guys, and that belief in, I suppose, me as a founder and the idea. It was probably me and then Will, obviously being our CTO, were the two main people back then when we raised that money. They were the two reasons. That was, people invest in the team, and that's what I would say to anyone that's looking to do something now. It's the idea is obviously important, and commercialization and making sure there's a business out of it, but they're going to invest in you, and that's probably the main thing. They're looking at someone that is going to be successful and get them a return for their investment.
Yeah, they want to make sure you can drive and run with it and do what you say you're going to do. Not get the money and pay yourself $200,000 a year as a salary.
Yeah,
correct.
I think at that stage, investors don't want to hear that you know everything and you're able to do everything, and you just need the money. I think those investors wanted to help me go on the journey as well. And if you open yourself up, and maybe you ask for help a little bit around there, and tell them that these are the areas you struggle and you're weak with, I think that actually opens up to a conversation where they can trust and help you. You tell them what you actually need, then they can help you. Whether it's them or inside their network, sort of plug some of the weaknesses you may have.
And speaking to investors in our journey, they want to help because they are putting their money on the line, but they also want to open their network and be involved in some capacity. The ones that are more hands-on, some just throw money at 20, 30 projects and hope for the best. But when you're looking for an investor, I think you want someone that's going to really add value. It's not just about money. The investment can come in many forms. It's resources, it's network, it's opening up different opportunities, taking it overseas, whatever it might be. Investors can come in different forms, and I think people, or advisors for that matter, people look at investment as a dollar figure, but a dollar figure plus some knowledge, or even just the knowledge as an advisor, it can be a significant investment in the business because it can save you a lot of time, money, and effort when you look at
networks and connections.
Correct. So there's plenty in that.
We're in the middle of a funding round now, so we got to profitability in March, and we've sustained that through the pandemic. And
how long did that take? Just asking that question.
Yeah, so we kicked off. I left my old job I think first day was September 1, 2014, away from not having a salary. And the idea in the company got formed a little bit earlier, but that was when we sort of really committed to it. So, we burnt through a lot of money, obviously, early with the mistakes we made. And then we tried to raise some money last year, and we weren't really good at it. That's probably what I would say. But we started to sell out of it. We started to get real traction in the product, and we're able to sell out of it. So we did a small safe note round at the end of the year to just get us through that Christmas period from a cash flow point of view. And then we hit profitability in March. And that's been a completely different feeling from as a founder, and not having to worry about money every 2 or 3 months, or where the next sort of money coming in is easy. And then what's happened off the back of, COVID-19's obviously been really good for our technology. There's been a lot of mindset changes in the property industry, which is where we're really focused at the moment, and that's opened up a lot of opportunities. We've got a zero contact parking product that's windows up, so it's completely COVID safe. So that's had a fair bit of demand. And then we've also got what we call agile parking, which allows us to tenants and their staff to share parking spaces automatically. So as they return to work in 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and they don't need the space 5 days a week, we've got the ability to throw that back into a pool that another staff member can use it, or it can go back into a marketplace that can be sold for someone else in the public to pay for it. So they're sort of fitted into the.
That's a good feature, because when you walk into or drive into a parking spot, you see all the reserve signs and no cars. It's quite a good feature actually, from all parties, I would imagine.
Yeah, so we were thinking about remote working prior to COVID, and as a trend that we wanted to be on, we thought that would open up and be a trend that people wouldn't work in the office every day, and we were starting to see that. We were seeing large corporate companies, and we were starting to see the space that was being wasted in their car parks, in the office car parks. So we had a large, I won't name these guys either. There's a large corporate that we're working with. They were spending $13 million a year on staff monthly parking, and $8 million was tied up in their lease.
Oh, wow.
And that was, in the places of they worked, that they had lease agreements for the office space, and they had parking that went with it. So that was tied in there. It was stuff that we couldn't really impact. But then they were spending $5 million on what we called overflow parking. But when you did the numbers, they were utilising, there's about 40% of their spaces going underutilised every day. So by utilising our solution and being able to manage that space, we were able to save $2 million off that $5 million bill. They've now deleted the whole $5 million bill because they don't need it from COVID, and they're just sharing the spaces in their office as people come back to work. So it's just utilising that space better, and it's just automating it. So the CEO is going on a week's holiday, and he or she can throw that space back into the pool, and either we can group it, so it can be just for an executive team, or it can be for the entire staff pool, or it could be that they want to make some revenue and charge it out to the public or some of the tenants in the building.
So when you started out on this journey, was that a concept that you were looking to solve, or is that something you found across the journey?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably something that we were definitely looking at things like that. So our sort of real focus was just how can we improve the parking experience? It was really archaic. You line up, you take a ticket. Sometimes the ticket machine works. Sometimes it sucks in your credit card. And we just thought the experience of getting in and out of a car park and paying for it was really not great. Most people you speak to have got a bad experience in a parking location. And you have to be careful when you work for someone like a Wilson or Secure, especially in New Zealand. Or I was told not to even tell people that's where I worked when I went to parties or barbecues, because they'd all had bad experience with parking. So we wanted to improve that experience. We wanted to digitize it and bring it in. So that was definitely a focus of what we're doing. We also wanted there's a lot of different technologies. A council, for instance, they'll use 7 or 8 different technologies, and they will go to one supplier and try to buy all 7 technologies from the one supplier. And we thought the smarter way to do that was to go to get best of breed for each of those technologies. It might be 3 or 4 suppliers, and then sort of integrate into one solution that allowed us to have a platform that would plug all those technologies and integrate in. We originally wanted to sell that into councils early days, and we just struggled to get the councils to get the concept and the red tape that you go through in local government to actually get a sale across the line. So we sort of pivoted into that commercial parking space and solving problems for the tenant or the property owner, and then their tenants and their users. So, and that could be a hospital, and it could be the end users, the staff, or it could be the visitor, or it could be a university where it's the students and contractors and visitors. Airports are obviously a big parking, commercial parking operation. So, solutions we do down at Hobart is completely online booking. We do a taxi management solution. We do a solution for their pickup area for buses and commercial vehicles dropping people off and picking people up. So it was around trying to find, and a lot of it's been automation, as I said earlier. So it's just about taking that manual process. And if you look at how you would buy monthly parking, that's a really manual process. So in the old way, it was around, you'd find a location, you'd ring the operator or email them, you'd get a price, you'd negotiate that price out. Then you get into the contract and you probably want terms and conditions changed or altered. So there'd be a discussion around that. And then once you actually agreed to it and you both signed it and it was scanned and everyone had a copy, you needed then to be put into an accounting system, and you needed a pass card to be created in the parking system. So there were 2 systems and they weren't talking to each other. And then the pass card system, once the pass card's created, you've got to get it to someone before they can start using it. So it would take days to get someone set up as a monthly parker. So now you apply for it online, you fill out a form, you agree to the rates, you tick the terms and conditions, that's your contract. You get approved or declined. Once you're approved, though, all you need to do is download the app and you start. And we then connected the access device with the payment device.
It's more seamless, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good example.
Yeah,
And there's heaps of
I
those
think,
in parking.
yeah. No, Mosstyn, it's a quick question. What drives you as a founder? So what's important to you as a founder? What gets you up in the morning? What keeps you going? Because you've been obviously in this business for was it 6 years, give or take, and just recently got to profitability. What drives you to keep pushing and driving and soldiering on within the business?
Yeah, I think the early days, I think even in my career in the corporate world was I love solving solutions, solving problems for people,
Mm.
coming up with solutions that actually works and people get a benefit out of. So that was sort of driving, what I was doing with selling parking technology, and then what obviously drove me into the business to start with. I think since then, I don't know if I could go back, to be quite honest. I think the culture, I think, working with great people, not having to worry about too much around the office politics and that type of stuff, and the red tape that goes along with a large corporate is probably driving it. And then I feel like I've got a great opportunity here. The business could have gone a couple of different ways a couple of times, but it's now starting to kick off, and I've got an opportunity to say, to change the way we my family and I live, and we think we've got a great opportunity, and this is the one that I think I've got the most value in because of my experience in the industry, and now the team we've got around us. So that's been the main driver for me. And it's really exciting at the moment because what COVID did for us was just change the way people were thinking about our tech. We were trying to educate a market, and now the market's gone, well, that's a
Mhm.
necessity for me now. So it's been a completely different mindset change for us.
I imagine it makes a
Yeah.
big difference when you're having a conversation when the market needs it and drives it in. I think having the chat to a lot of technology businesses, COVID has been a positive to a number of these businesses because everyone is looking for technology to solve a lot of problems right now and more open to try things. That's what we've seen. There's been more openness to actually give something a go rather than let's wait 12, 18 months and make a decision on this. So dealing with corporates like you might be can take time, but if you've got use cases that can save $2 million off the back of $5 million expense, that's a significant use case, one would imagine. So I think it's just starting to open up a lot of those conversations. It's changed everyone's mindset of what technology can do for us, and that is probably seen as a necessity now for you. If you can drive through, not touch anything, no buttons, no anything, yeah, you can definitely see the value there.
Yeah, not having to educate each person one by one, have that
Yes,
all at once in mass. It's a
mm,
huge thing to happen.
correct.
Yeah,
Probably very rare for it to happen again too. But
Yeah, correct. Very rare.
yeah, and I don't wish a pandemic ever again. Don't
No.
get me wrong. I've been locked down in Melbourne since March, and I don't wish that on anyone ever again. I think the other thing for us is, so that's been our real focus now. But our vision is we don't think single parking applications survive going forward, or we think they die, and we think the parking transaction is a service that needs to fit inside a bigger ecosystem. So there's three main ecosystems that we're looking at the moment. So the mobility as a service or public transport sort of world, where we can plug parking into that world, and we've done that with Placey and car sales that have just announced their new mobility as a service application and their sort of startup that they've sort of built inside car sales. We've also done it with Arrivo and the RACV that have sort of gone down that track as well. But we sort of see that as, instead of doing parking as a single transaction, it's then done as part of your total transport journey. So you do your A to B, your trip journey planning. And if driving is part of that, whether it's a car share or it's driving to the
Mhm.
station, for instance, parking has a part to play. And it actually can get the mobility as a service company are trying to reduce congestion. And we've got a similar sort of goal. If we can actually get the driver to look at all the other modes of transport and maybe jumping on the trains quicker and more efficient for it to get them to their meeting on time, and that means they don't drive. That's part of our sort of vision. It's what's the best outcome for getting people around our city, but also what's best for the person that's actually making those decisions. And parking hasn't traditionally sat inside that mobility space. But we're starting to see, education, especially where there's been a push at the moment away from public transport. And we're sort of saying to people, why don't you get a relationship with the driver now? So when they start to feel comfortable again, you can get them back onto the more sustainable transport. The other two areas is the connected car space with the car manufacturers and
Mhm.
getting it in there. So they, they're struggling a little bit with engagement around their connected car platforms and services to go into them. And parking's a really good fit
Mhm.
to go in there. It provides a better option for them, better experience, better safety. And then the other one that we're really focused on is these smart property apps that are starting to get rolled out across our commercial and residential properties. Again, parking should be just done as a service as part of that bigger ecosystem. So that's where our vision is, and that's where the business is moving to. It's an integration business. It's a white labeling. You won't see a lot of UbiPark stuff out there. It's for hidden in between bigger ecosystems.
Providing the platform and the service for those verticals effectively.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure,
Yeah,
being agile allows you to then jump on any of those opportunities as they happen, because you don't know where one of them is going to come from first, or depending on who you're talking to or what sales channel you're doing and what the cycle's like.
Yeah, I think the big focus for us and how we got the property is just focus on solving for the property and getting the technology into the property, and that opens up those other opportunities. But getting Porsche and Placey and Arrivo on our as customers has actually helped us get the property, and the property owner sees the value out of being able to attract those users into their their car park locations.
And I think it's having a bigger vision. That's something that you're talking about here. It's not just about parking. It's a vision. It's solving bigger problems, and then how do you evolve to that and selling that story and that journey? And you don't have all the answers right now either, right? So getting to what those outcomes might be is really about what the bigger vision is. So the next maybe 3 to 5 years is looking quite interesting for you in terms of Ubi Park, in terms of where it's all going. And yeah, sounds like a nice little path that you're definitely on right now.
Yeah, I think that's part of your learning, right? Is that
Mm.
focus. I mean, we were following sales and money around all the place, and before Andrew was that you can sort of spread yourself too wide, and you can sort of take your product off on areas that probably aren't getting to your end goal. And I think that's what the founders out there that are looking to do that now, getting it really clear around what your end goal is, and then working out what those steps are to get there is really important. And I think we've done a lot of work on that the last 12 months, and we refresh it all the time now. So it's key to what we're actually in. And the trick now is we're scaling and it's getting quick, and we're going through some growing pains. But the key is to make sure everyone in the team knows what everyone's doing and what everyone's role is, and then we're all on the same vision and we're all down the same path. And that's the sort of a lot of work that we've done lately. So this will allow us to scale real quickly.
That's better problems to have than it was at the start, right? So growing pains is a good problem.
Yeah, on
Yes,
touching that, just
definitely.
before we probably wrap up, for any other startups that are going through or starting out at the moment, what are 3 tips that you could share from your experience that would help someone trying to avoid some of those mistakes that you made?
Yeah, due diligence, I think, is the key for me. So just making sure you tick off, talk to people. People out there want to help you. Make sure you get it from a cross section. Don't just get it from your friends or your family. And that's around your product. That's around people you partner up with. That's around your ideas.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different paths to succeed in this. And if you can get different ideas from different people, then work out what's best for you. I think that's the thing. But and then once you get good people around you because you've done that work, I think you can then open up and allow them to guide you down their expertise, whether it's technology with likes of you guys, or commercial or finance, or someone that's setting it up, or it's legal. That was one area that we got burned on a lot early, was a lot of money in legal. And now we've got a partner that's sort of real focused around startups. I will give them a plug that we use Luna for that type of stuff. And they, we were getting stuff done by bigger legal corporations, and put it in front of the customer wouldn't sign it because they were protecting us too much. Whereas Luna's actually allowed us to be commercial, but be protected at the same time, and not cost me an arm and a leg for something I couldn't use. So things like that, you just got to go through, and everyone will have different paths the way through it. But the big thing for me would be due diligence, be open to ideas, learn from people, take in the feedback, and you don't not every piece of feedback's going to be useful to you, but just definitely take it in, listen, and utilize people that have done it before to work out how you might be able to miss some of the steps that especially what I've done. I'm completely different now to what I would have been if I'd started again now. I'd be completely doing it super different to what I did early. They're probably the main things. And I think once you've got that, and then I think make sure you're so focused on that goal. Make sure you can commercialize it, but make sure you're focused on that goal, and it is something that people want. So make sure you get that tested by customers, and again, not your family, not your friends who will tell you that it's a really cool idea. Make sure you go out and get people that potential customers or users of the solution to tell you whether they would use it or not. I think that's the key.
Yeah,
Thanks, Mosstyn. That was
good tips there.
great insight there, and plenty for people to think about. In terms of if anyone wants to find out about UbiPark or get in contact with you, how might they reach you?
Yeah, UbiPark.com. You can jump on there. You can contact us through there. I'm on LinkedIn, so definitely look me up, Mosstyn Howell on LinkedIn. Yeah, and reach out. I'll be happy to talk to anyone about it, about anything we've talked about today, or if there's anyone out there that's looking, to take some steps that's prior to me. Well, I think we're only, early stages in our journey still, so, but we have learned a lot over the last sort of, 3 or 4 years, especially. We've just gone through the Reach Accelerator program. So, from a prop tech point of view, and that's sort of really helped us as well. It's opened up a lot of doors. And we did a few of the accelerator programs. We did one with Plug and Play with a mobility piece in Japan. So some of those sort of programs too can definitely help. You got to make sure you go into them with the right idea and goals out of it. They're not just making your business grow. You've got to actually work at it and learn from it, and then utilize it yourself. You still got to do everything yourself, but they are helpful in guiding you down the right direction and putting you in front of good people that can help you. So yeah, I definitely look at those sort of things as well to fast track your business.
Perfect, Mosstyn. Yeah, great advice from along the podcast. I think, yeah, definitely one we'll be sharing out on LinkedIn probably come December, given timelines. But yeah, we'll share it out pre-Christmas because I think there's a lot of content in this people can learn from. And your experience has, been not different than many others. And I think it is a journey, and I think that's a key word. And I think we all have to focus on. It is a journey. It's a learning experience, and it's evolution of yourself as a founder, your team will grow and change and think differently if you're willing to commit to doing that as well. So I think that's really important. Really appreciate your time. If you liked the episode, please like and subscribe. And thanks again for joining us, Mosstyn. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on,
Thanks,
guys.
Mosstyn.
Really enjoyed it. Cheers.
Cheers.